Hi, this is Dr. Michael Bogart with Aspect Ministries. Well, recently I made a video in my Making Sense of the Chosen series on why the Romans were such a major presence in the Holy Land during the time of Jesus. In it, I explained the Roman conquest of Judea in 63 BC and their rule over the Jews as an occupying force. Since that video, I've come across more specific questions from viewers about the Roman presence in the Chosen, especially the Roman offices and ranks associated with certain characters mentioned in the series. Characters like Quintus, Gaius, and Atticus Aemilius are featured in seasons 1 and 2, which is as far as the series has gone at the time that I'm making this video. So here is my quick and basic explanation of these Roman titles. I'm going to include ones that haven't been mentioned so far, partly because they may be mentioned in future seasons, and partly because, well, what the heck. I might as well list most of the main Roman offices while I'm at it. Let's start with a little background. Rome as an entity began when the Latin tribes settled around the Tiber River in central Italy more than 8 centuries before Christ. Presumably at that time they were ruled by chiefs or head men, most notably by Romulus, founder of the city of Rome. Then came the kingdom of Rome around 750 BC, ruled by a succession of 7 kings, Romulus being the first. Some of these kings were not even Latin, but Etruscan, a very different people group living just to the north who had come to dominate the Latins. The final Etruscan king was violently overthrown in 509 BC when an Etruscan noble raped a well-known and virtuous Latin woman, resulting in her death. The enraged Latins rose up, overthrew the Etruscan overlords, and established the Roman Republic. They were understandably a bit skittish of kings, so no Roman king was chosen as a replacement. Instead, the Republic was ruled by the Senate, the highest governing body in ancient Rome. The Senate was a council of elders. Senator means elder. English borrowed the word senator from Latin to make our words senior and senile, and of course senator. A senator was selected from the landed aristocracy, the patricians. Senators had a reputation then, and sometimes even now, of mainly looking after the interests of the wealthy elites and padding their own pockets. Well, the Roman Republic fell apart in the century before Christ when the victorious general Julius Caesar grabbed his way to power as dictator. The Senate, realizing that he had become a dangerously powerful man, assassinated him on the floor of the Senate itself, each member stabbing him so that no one could be singled out for justice. I guess political intrigues and hit jobs are nothing new. After Caesar's death, the Roman government descended into chaos with a number of men vying for power, including Mark Antony, lover of Cleopatra, and Octavian, nephew of Julius Caesar. When the smoke cleared, Octavian was the last man standing. He assumed the title of imperator or emperor, sort of like a king on steroids. We know him as Caesar Augustus. From that time onward, for almost 500 years, Rome had an emperor, sometimes even 2 emperors, one for the eastern provinces, modern-day Greece, Turkey, Syria, and Egypt, and one for the western ones, Italy, France, Spain, Britain, and parts of North Africa. Often the position of emperor was dynastic, passed from father to son or uncle to nephew, and sometimes a general or other important person simply overthrew the previous emperor and took over. The Senate still functioned, but by this time it was mostly a rubber stamp for whoever sat in the imperial palace. Okay, maybe that gives some perspective on the Romans who occupied the Holy Land at the time of Jesus. In the box below I will put a link to my video in this series that gives more information on the Romans and their history and what they were doing in the Holy Land. With that background in mind, let's talk about these Roman offices, starting with the title magistrate. Magistrate comes from the Latin word for lord or master. By the way, the Romans spoke and wrote in their native language of Latin, although in the eastern parts of their empire they sometimes used Greek, which people were more familiar with in that region. So, a magistrate is a lord and was a generic term for any high official or administrator in the Roman Empire. In other words, it was a term that applied to all of the highest officials. Magistrates could also have other titles related to their specific office, such as consul or proconsul. A consul was the highest official in the empire that was elected by any wider group of citizens. Consuls would be something like our presidents or prime ministers. Along with the Senate, they ruled over the Roman affairs at the highest level under the emperor himself. Consuls served for only 1 year at a time and always in pairs. So over time, there were a lot of consuls. A proconsul was what you might expect from how the title's put together. Pro, from, the consul. So a proconsul was a delegated representative of a consul, often ruling one of the Roman provinces at the pleasure and under the authority of the consuls and the emperor. They would be like our governors. In the book of Acts, Sergius Paulus is recorded as proconsul of the island of Cyprus, and Gallio is recorded as proconsul of Achaia, which is southern Greece. A prefect was another level of Roman administrator. They could be civil, military, or religious. As government administrators, they could be in charge of a region or district within a Roman province under a proconsul. Pontius Pilate was prefect of Judea. In the military, prefects might be in charge of medium-sized army units, such as cavalry commanders or camp commandants. Religious prefects were overseers of certain rites and ceremonies practiced in Roman society. In the Harry Potter series, the student heads of houses at Hogwarts are called prefects. Well, to a certain degree, Rome believed in checks and balances in government, and this belief was obviously the result of the Etruscan tyranny when the Romans got sick and tired of kings and tyrants and ruling elites. Since the Senate seemed to care only about their own interests, sometimes at the expense of the common folk or plebs, the commoners were the plebeian class, the plebs demanded some representation of their own. And sometime around 500 BC, they established the concilium plebis, the plebeian council. Since the plebeian class was organized according to various Italian tribes, the plebs elected representatives called tribunes or tribal representatives. The tribunes served in that concilium plebis. So a tribune was an officer overseeing and representing the rights and affairs of the plebs, and as a body, they acted as a check on the Senate. Now, maybe our Western form of government with checks and balances makes a little more sense. However, the office of tribune had a wider usage. Tribunes could be officials in the military, and military tribunes were responsible for the oversight of an army unit, either at the level of legion, like our brigade, or on the level of cohort, like our company or battalion. A praetor was an administrative official over a large army unit or sometimes overseeing a branch of government. In the military, a praetor would be like a general. In the government, a praetor would be like the secretary of some major government sector, secretary of agriculture or something like that. In the Chosen, Quintus is a praetor over the Roman occupation forces in Galilee, which is northern Israel. An aedile was an elected office overseeing a Roman city, especially of its public buildings, public works, and official functions. Aediles would be like our mayor. A quaestor was an inspector, mainly overseeing finances, but also carrying out other administrative duties. Sometimes we use a modified form of this Latin term when we are on a journey looking for something. We might say that we're on a quest. A quaestor was an inspector looking for financial or ethical fraud, overseeing money, or having responsibility for investigating something. The cohortes urbanae served as special police and investigators to arrest troublemakers and suppress riots and public disturbances. They were sometimes attached to the Roman army to deal with uprisings and potential threats. They would be like federal marshals or other types of higher government police forces. In the Chosen, Atticus Aemilius belongs to the cohortes urbanae. The Praetorian Guard were another imperial security force, sometimes bitter rivals of the cohortes urbanae. The Praetorians were charged with protecting the emperor and his officials. In our own day, they would be like some sort of combination of military police and secret service. When the Apostle Paul was imprisoned in Rome, he was guarded by Praetorian guards, some of whom had come to faith in Jesus Christ, according to Philippians 4:22. Paul refers to them by the name that they sometimes use for themselves, the household of Caesar. Well, what about ordinary police? Those were the vigiles urbanae. This is the second time we have used the Latin word urbane. We get our word urban from this term, and of course it has to do with affairs and life in a city. So the cohortes urbanae are the city cohort, or the city unit, and the vigiles urbanae are the city watchmen. We get our word vigil, vigilant, and vigilante from that Latin word. The vigiles urbanae were the guards of public safety. They served in all of the Roman cities, both as police and as firefighters. Back to the army. A centurion commanded a century. Now, not a century of 100 years, but theoretically at least a unit of 100 soldiers. In actual practice, it was more like 80. They had a lot of authority in those units, very much like a combination of sergeant and lieutenant all rolled into one. In seasons 1 and 2, Gaius is a centurion detached from his normal duties to oversee the collection of taxes by Matthew, the Jewish tax collector working for the praetor. Later, Gaius is promoted to primi ordines, in other words, a first order centurion, like a first sergeant, sergeant major, or first lieutenant. And finally, I want to at least mention the abbreviation SPQR. The Romans were famous for abbreviating words, especially on public monuments and inscriptions. SPQR was an abbreviation standing for Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Roman Senate and people. In other words, it stood for the Senate and people of Rome, wherever Rome exerted its power and influence. SPQR was inscribed on Roman monuments, documents, and coins. Sometimes movies portray it tattooed onto people's bodies, like in the movie Gladiator. It would be like tattooing a national flag or other emblem on our bodies today, a sign of patriotism. There may be more terms and actions that need to be explained about the Romans as the conquerors and occupiers of Judea and Galilee, but this is probably enough for now. Let's see what season 3 brings. This is Dr. Michael Bogart with Aspect Ministries.